Hello, Anne. It's so good to see your face
Thank you.
and hear your voice. It has been a little while.
Yes, it has. We had two North cities in 1 month, so that really kind of threw off our schedule.
Yes, and more coming up. I mean, I'm not entirely sure when this is going to be posted or when this is going to air. I know it'll be a Thursday. Which Thursday is a mystery to me because I have lost all track of time.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been the last 30 days or so have just been a whirlwind for me. So, um, yeah, so I apologize. I know, but I will say this, and I mentioned this just before we started. So, and this is a thank you to all the folks out there that are watching who have come to these festivals and let me know that they are loyal viewers of Ask Eddie and Ann, and they always say, where's Ann? When is Ann coming to a festival? So it's really terrific. You have your own coterie of devoted fans out there.
Thank you very much, everybody. And I'm always at Oakland. So,
Always at the Oakland one, but one of these days we'll get you to come. Like, would you go back to Seattle?
yes, I would. My sister would be thrilled to see me, and Sean Axmakers offered to pick me up. So,
Great. Maybe Seattle. We
yeah.
can like that would be great. That would be in February.
The perfect time to visit Seattle.
Well, it is working. I mean, the Seattle Festival is has really solidified into something very, very special. So I'm happy about that. All the people there are terrific. The fans are great. So it would be the icing on the cake to get you back to Seattle to do this. So
Yes, then I could go to Dick's. So,
there you go. There's all
but
kinds of secret reasons we do these things, but yeah, that would be fun. Shall we get rolling?
yeah,
I
let's get
mean,
rolling.
I honestly, I've been so busy, I haven't really even looked at these questions. So this is going to be totally off the top of my head. Sometimes, just so people know, sometimes, and assembles the questions and sends them on in advance, but there's no telling if I'll have time to preview these or not. Or so today I'm totally winging it. So,
Okay. And also,
uh,
so I think do you I don't well, I guess we can do it at the end, but let's talk about we each have seen a movie we want to discuss. So
okay, very good. Well, I have a good story to share. We'll save it for the end. That's the bait on the hook to keep
yeah.
people listening. I get, of course, once it's on the thing, they can just fast forward to the end. But I hope they don't do that. Okay, so who's going first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
And this is from Douglas, who's the author of Pittsburgh Boxing: A Pictorial History. Have you ever con
And I know this because Douglas sent me a book at one point. I know Douglas is a big, obviously, he's any book about the history of boxing in Pittsburgh is all about Billy Conn, mostly, who fought Joe Louis a couple of times for the heavyweight championship. I mean, there's more boxers from Pittsburgh than just Billy Conn, but he was the big guy. So anyway, so thanks for the question, Douglas. Even before I hear it.
have you ever considered doing a Norfest in Pittsburgh? The Steel City has very lively art scene, and I think it would go over like gangbusters. The Bendium Theater would be a perfect venue. It opened in 1928 as a Stanley Theater and has an old school charm. The Three Stooges and Jimmy Durante used to perform there. Plus, I'm sure you're aware that Regis Toomey was from here. Is there a chance to make this happen in the future?
Yes, that will happen when they expand the annual calendar and a year becomes 400 days instead of 365 days. No, I'm joking, but yeah, Pittsburgh would be great because I have friends in Pittsburgh and I have been to Pittsburgh several times and enjoy it very much. It's a great city. It's really interesting because I'm sure Douglas will agree with this. The first time I went to Pittsburgh was in the 1980s, and it lived up to its name as the Steel City. And I mean, it was dirty. The air was dirty in Pittsburgh, and they did a tremendous job of cleaning up that place and improving the air quality. It's like a jewel now. It's just terrific. So, and I understand Douglas obviously has been listening to my talking about this stuff, because he knows that the venue is a crucial thing for doing this, that we want like a charming old vintage movie theater. So we'll see. I mean, thank you, Douglas, for suggesting this. I'm just going to be really frank right now. I mean, the challenge on all of this is, if they want to do a Noir City, that's all possible, do a Noir Film Festival. The question is whether they're going to get me or not, because I just don't have this kind of time, except for the festival out here in the Bay Area. I mean, I can't do more than 3 days of a festival any longer, because it's just too time consuming. There's too many. I'm stretched a little thin right now, as a story I'll tell you later will explain. But I never say never. I mean, a lot of this has to do with how assertive and aggressive people on the other end are. How badly they want to have the festival there, and it's great to have people like Douglas, and the festival we just did in Detroit. This lovely guy John Monahan is the one who made all that happen. Because he worked very closely with the venue. He's on the board of the Redford Theater. It's a venue that was restored by people who just wanted to keep it going, and so they hustle, and that's kind of what it takes. But then there has to be somebody who works with the venue who wants to make it happen, because it's, at this point, it's fabulous, because like when we go to Seattle or Los Angeles or Chicago, there's they now make it happen. The venue themselves, it's not something that we're, once we do the programming, it like they take over, and that's essential, because we're limited in the manpower here, woman power really. And like Bob Trait is the guy at the Colonial Theater in Phoenixville. So when we do Noir City, Philadelphia, even though it's what
Sorry.
just happened to you, Ann?
Lost my lights. Sorry.
You
They're
just went in the
motion
dark.
triggered. There you go.
Okay.
Sorry. Hopefully that
All
won't
right, very
happen
good.
again, but we'll see.
Okay. So anyway, that's how that works. So Douglas, if you want to be that person in Pittsburgh and try to figure out who it is at the Benedum Theater, we'll entertain offers and things, but it is getting to the point where there's no way I can really do one of these a month, and it's starting to creep up on that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's that. I mean, Douglas, why don't you travel to Phoenixville, right, in November? Come to Phoenixville to see the festival, and you can give me a pitch in person.
There you go.
All right, now this is from Joe in Suffolk County, New York. He said this one I know, Ann, once in a while when it's timely, you'll take a question and move it out of the queue and push it forward to be timely. So Joe just read the New York Times obit reporting that Alain Delon had died. It was this morning, so he wrote this the morning Delon died, which was in August sometime. I don't remember the day. I have only seen 3 of his films, Le Samouraï, Le Soleil, and La Piscine. His ability to portray beautiful menace. Well, Alain Delon portrays beautiful anything.
Yeah, I was going to say he was just beautiful.
Yeah,
so.
whatever it is that he's conveying,
Beautiful.
he's conveying it beautifully. Yeah, he said is striking. In my opinion, Monsieur Delon put this to good use playing Tom Ripley. Please share some thoughts on Delon. And I'm just going to, before we share those thoughts, and I'm sure you have many thoughts of your own, Ann, he notes that moments after the obituary was published on the New York Times online edition, a reader posted a comment complaining that it referred to Rocco and his brothers as an example of the gangster genre. The comment suggested that the obituary be corrected, quote, before further embarrassment descends on the New York Times. Your thoughts? Well, my thoughts are that's the least thing that the New York Times right now has to be concerned about in terms of further embarrassment. Yeah, uh, it's just lazy. It's just that's just lazy. I mean, there is a gangster element to Rocco and his brothers, but it is not an example really of the gangster genre, you know. Um, but this reminds me of the funniest one of those, which I just used in the new draft of my Dark City Dames book. The funniest example of that was the Los Angeles Times did an obit of Rhonda Fleming when she died. And they said the headline on the obituary said Rhonda Fleming, Queen of Technicolor, dies at 90, whatever, right? And then they talked about her career. And at the end, in the last paragraph, they say, and she will be best remembered for The Spiral Staircase, Spellbound, and Out of the Past. Three black and white noir films from the first 2 years of her career, right? So it was like Queen of Technicolor, and she'll be remembered for these black and white, very noir films, right? So I thought that was kind of ironic. Anyway, you just start us off, Anne. Your thoughts on Alain Delon, and was he your, and specifically, I guess, about him being a Ripley.
Well, for being a Ripley, yeah, I mean, he was good. It's not exactly like it's kind of interesting because they were definitely kind of, I don't know. I'm not wild about the screenplay, I guess is what I say in the interpretation of the character, which wasn't necessarily him. That was more the writing. So I mean the film's good and it's certainly beautiful. I mean, the color is gorgeous and he's quite gorgeous in it, but I felt like his character kind of lacked the subtlety of the character in the novel, which is not about his performance. It was very much about the writing and the direction of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, because I think the character is a little more complicated, and they kind of went with kind of a simpler kind of character, just sort of more, just kind of straight out
I could never quite figure
sociopathic.
out in I mean, I like the movie very
Yeah,
much. I think it's a beautifully made film,
yeah,
and it's very suspenseful. And he's a movie star,
yeah.
right? And like you cannot take your eyes off Alain Delon when he's on a movie screen.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't. But the thing about Tom Ripley is, number one, he's a sociopath, and number two, he's an imposter.
Hmm.
And I could never figure out, like, why would Alain Delon want to be somebody else? He's
Yeah.
Alain Delon, right? So like,
Yeah,
why
yeah,
why would he want to masquerade as, well, Dickie, and the
yeah.
I don't believe the character's name was Dickie in the you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about,
yeah.
the Purple Noon, or the
Yeah.
Blanc Soleil. Um, so I think, honestly, my thoughts on Delon are, I think he, because I'm old enough to remember when he was a big star,
Yeah.
and I think he suffered from the same thing that beautiful women suffer from. They can't be that great an actress. It's like when you see, I don't know, just to use an example, like, nobody ever expected Julia Roberts to win an Oscar for Best Actress, which she ended up doing. And I'm sure she felt hugely vindicated, because it was like, that's not why they cast me.
Yeah.
They don't expect me to win acting awards. People just want to look at me on screen. And I think Delon, I would say, critics and audiences kind of felt that way, but obviously the filmmakers loved him, because he worked with the best filmmakers in the world during his career. Absolutely. Like every great filmmaker in Europe wanted Delon in their picture. And not just because in Europe it meant people would go to see the movie, right? Um, so I think he's still,
Sorry. I
I think he's still
didn't have to
underrated.
deal with those.
Okay. Do you want to deal with it, or do you want to
No,
just
because
be left in the
let's just,
dark?
I'll just be left in the dark. We'll just live with it.
Okay. Well, I'm using the light of the sun to, because this is all this is the sun coming in my window. Anyway, so that's, you know, really underrated actor. If people have not seen Mr. Klein, the Joseph Losey film Mr. Klein, that is a masterpiece, and he is absolutely brilliant in it. Uh, and he could do a lot more than just be that handsome leading man guy. He's also in most of the crime films he made, he's like the nasty bad guy,
Yeah.
right? And so anyway, I always enjoy watching him on screen.
Yeah, I
And
think he was a good actor. And for my personal favorite is definitely Le Cercle Rouge, which I just think is
yeah,
a fantastic film. If people haven't seen it, you should check that one out because it's just my sister and I went and saw it in a theater in Seattle, and it was amazing to see that up on the big screen. I really
yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's a fantastic film. It's funny, I'm showing coming up pretty soon on Noir Alley. I'll be showing Melville's La Deuxième Souffle, Second Wind or Second Breath. And he's not in that. Lino Ventura is the star of that. But those Melville films are so painstaking in how methodical they are in
Hmm.
laying out the heist and the whole thing. And it is not some people's cup of tea. Le Cercle
Yeah,
Rouge is, uh, I just, well, for people who haven't seen it,
yeah.
not only is Delon great in it, but Yves Montand is fantastic in that film. And, his big scene where he has to come in, and his part of the whole plot is to take this one shot,
Yeah,
and of course he's like a jittery alcoholic at this point.
yeah.
And man, that scene is fantastic.
Yeah,
And then
and I love the cop that is like pursuing them. And I guess he was actually like a vaudevillian originally in his
I'm trying to
career.
remember who the actor
Yeah,
was now, but
yeah,
that's Melville. It's
yeah,
like it's like the crooks versus the cops, and he doesn't really pass a lot of judgment. It's just like that's the game. That's the cat and mouse game.
yeah. Well, and the
Anyway,
cop has Siamese cats, which is such a great detail.
cat and mouse, like I say.
Um,
And now I noticed that you've done it again. You've backed up a second DeLong question to
yeah.
the first one, so let us hear it.
And this is from Ron in Jupiter, Florida. After the death of Alain Delon, I decided to watch the heist films he made with Jean Gabin. Any number can win. What a pleasure to watch those two giants of film, one a veteran of 59 and the other already a superstar at 28. The film had one of the most amazing finales I've ever seen, but I was really bothered by the fact that it was achieved through a completely inexplicable flaw in carrying out of an otherwise beautifully crafted crime. Are you ever bothered by some sort of inexplicable plot element to the extent that it ruins otherwise thoroughly enjoyable films, or is it just me?
Ron from Jupiter, Florida. Ron, it's just you. No, because, well, I mean, in this case, I mean, there is an answer to that question that we'll get to, but in this case, it didn't ruin it for me because I don't even remember what the inexplicable flaw is that you're referring to. So clearly, in my experience of that film, everything that's great about the movie completely overwhelmed the inexplicable flaw. Um, and I know, and we can't really talk about this, but that is one of my favorite endings. Uh, clearly to a heist film,
Yeah.
and if it took an inexplicable flaw to get to that ending, it was worth it. It was worth it because it's just a fantastic scene. And as a writer, coming up with something like that and then getting the right actors to play it out. And I apologize to people watching who have not seen the movie, but it is fantastic because I love climaxes of suspense films that end in such a minor key.
Hmm.
where it's like you get all this suspense and everything is ratcheted up, and are they going to get away with it and all this stuff, and then the film just kind of stops
Yeah.
for this long extended scene where nothing happens except everything is happening, and it's like, oh my god, it was almost unbearable for the tension. It's just fantastic. So if you have to commit a lapse of logic or have something, what you know what Ron refers to as an inexplicable flaw, it's often worth the risk if the payoff is that good. So there's no way it would ruin it for me. And I know what Ron is talking about, because there are people, I'll just say this, I think I mentioned before that David Mamet, the great playwright, is a big fan of Noir Alley, and he pretty much critiques each week's films and types up the critique and sends them to me. So I have like this whole collection of Mamet
Oh, wow.
critiquing the films, right? And I recently showed Out of the Past, and he wrote a letter saying it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Because he's doing exactly what Ron is doing here, which is like, this doesn't make sense. So I think at this point everybody knows that the last act of Out of the Past doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it makes sense if you stop and really analyze it and like get out index cards and figure it out. But in the watching of it, who keeps track of the plot? And I get why Mamet is being critical. Like, this is why this film isn't the greatest film noir ever made, because this is the inexplicable flaw. You can't follow the plot, right? I tend to be more generous and more lenient in that regard, because everything else is just too good. I mean, I'm aware of the flaw, but I'm looking at this fabulous art direction, this incredible cinematography. The actors are all at their absolute peak. The dialogue is absolutely brilliant. Emotionally, the film works. So I'm not all that concerned about the plot. If your other stuff isn't that good, you're not going to get away with a shitty plot. Sorry, but that's you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? I mean, being great in all the other departments can cover that up. Likewise, I don't think, but I will agree with David in that you really can't have a great film without a great script. You can have a film that you love and a film that's incredibly watchable, but I will never call a film great if I think the screenplay has flaws in it, because it just isn't, it's not possible to have the film be great without a if it's a narrative film, you can't, it's not going to work. So anyway, that's my feeling about that.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of Giallo lately, so I've had to kind of throw away any hope of, of
Of the of
logic.
stuff making sense. I mean,
That's
those
something
films,
then. I mean, it just
those
you just
films
have
do
to
not
go
make
with
sense.
it. But they're so beautiful. And yeah, so you just kind of have to go with it sometimes.
Well, because I will say this as well, because who's going to stop me? No, I will say this, that cinema is the closest art form to dreaming,
Hmm.
and dreams don't always make sense. So it's not, so the flaw in the writing can be, it drags. The flaw can be the characters aren't fleshed out. The flaw, there's all kinds of different flaws. That it doesn't make sense is not necessarily a fatal flaw,
Yeah.
right? Because, and I've used this line always when I talk about Cornell Woolrich, he doesn't write stories, he writes nightmares, and nightmares don't always make sense.
Hmm.
So when people say, I couldn't keep track of what was going on in the chase, the movie doesn't make any sense, it's like, well, yeah, but that doesn't really matter, because it's like a fever dream. The guy has malaria and he's having these he dreams this whole thing. It's like Mulholland Drive. It doesn't make sense because it's a dream, because she's dreaming the whole thing. That's why it doesn't actually have to make sense. And it makes emotional sense. Everything is valid about the disintegration of the Naomi Watts character, but you're just getting it from a different perspective. You're inside her head. So in that sense, I don't find these flaws. I mean, that doesn't apply to Out of the Past because nobody's dreaming that
Right.
story.
Right.
But it's, you know, I'm a stickler sometimes and not other times. It kind of depends on what the ambitions of the filmmakers are. Did they fulfill their ambition or did they not fulfill their
Hmm.
ambition? So, and you're a horror movie fan, and that horror movies don't make any
Yeah.
sense whatsoever most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so John from Los Alamos, New Mexico. Okay, um, he says, why don't you give more love and appreciation to the numerous leading man fine performances of Edmund O'Brien in film noir? He is not as square jawed and handsome as Mitchum or Hayden. I would debate whether Robert Mitchum is square jawed, honestly,
Yeah.
but he gives solid performances. Okay, that's number one. Then he has another question after that. I you may have missed the love I have showered on Edmund O'Brien
No.
because I am a big Edmund O'Brien fan. And in my book, Dark City, I certainly give him his due when I'm talking about DOA. And I even to the point where I say that I absolutely believe that Edmund O'Brien has saved movies with his performances because if he's been in a lot of stuff that the direction isn't very good, and
Hmm.
he just kind of picks up the movie and propels it forward of his own initiative
Hmm.
because he starts to when he starts to get wound up and really get into it. And I mean, DOA is an over the top example of that, but there are other pictures that he's in where he just carries the whole movie. I mean, he is the glue that holds the killers together. I
Hmm.
mean, it's like
Yeah.
you certainly remember him more than I can't even remember the actor's name now, who fulfills that same role in Citizen Kane, who like walks the audience through the whole movie. Nobody even remembers his name, that actor, but Edmund O'Brien does that in The Killers, and he's tremendous in the film. So, did you agree with me on my thing about Mitchum? The thing about Mitchum is that he doesn't have a square jaw.
No, he's
He's
not
not
square
like,
jawed at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
he's I mean, he's macho,
Oh
he's
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
virile,
I
he's
mean, he's
all those,
very, yeah, he's all
but he
those
doesn't really
things.
have the square. I mean, Sterling
Yeah.
Hayden does have like
Does that. Yeah.
the jaw, definitely, and Robert Ryan is kind of square jawed,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Mitchum is kind of funny. He almost doesn't have a chin.
It's a
It's
weak
weird.
chin.
It's a weak chin.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Not that
And yeah.
not that that's hurt his chances
Right. It is.
ever in his life. Yeah. Yeah.
But charisma's a big thing. Like a lot of times it's funny, like someone will say, oh, that guy's so handsome. And it's like, no, he's not. He just has like charisma at the wazoo. That's two different things.
Absolutely.
Just
Absolutely.
just like there's women that people think of as, I always thought I loved Betty Davis and Mrs. Skeffington because she manages to convince the audience that she was this great beauty when she was younger. And it's not that she isn't an attractive woman, but by no stretch of the imagination was she a great beauty. And I love that role in Mrs. Skeffington because it really shows the power of her acting and her
Yes.
presence that you
Yes.
buy into this. She was this great beauty that all these men loved and stuff like that.
No, I agree with you completely. And I mean, kind of the same thing goes with Stanwyck. I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah,
not conventionally beautiful, but uh, she had a magnetism that was undeniable. And a lot of it has to do with the voice. With both of them, it's the
yeah.
voice. Anyway, but interestingly, John's second question is, why do so many film noir actresses have lipstick going above their lip line? And of course, he cites Stanwyck and Gloria Graham.
Yeah.
John finds it unattractive and frankly creepy. Uh, not being a lipstick wearer, I'm not entirely sure. I know that in Gloria Graham's case, it was an attempt to hide the issue she was having with her mouth and her
Yeah.
upper lip. So when the surgery she had kind of deadened her upper lip, she kind of just drew more lip than she actually had. With Stanwyck, I'm not entirely sure what the deal was. I know the two movies in particular that John is talking about are Witness to Murder and Crime of Passion, where she does have this weird, like extra thick thing of lipstick on her upper lip. I don't know.
I
It
mean, it's
must.
just makeup goes in and out of fashion, especially with lip liner. It's like this whole thing, where they're trying to create a special effect, and that's just what the fashion of the time is. I mean, it certainly looks better than, injecting botulism into your into your lips, which is what people do now.
Well, and
In
what
case
the
people don't know,
question.
Botox is botulism. It literally is
Well,
botulism. In case people were wondering why I'm saying that.
so here's a question that I think would make for a good research project for someone. Did they decide to do this, or were they told to do this? Did the producers or the studio heads say she doesn't look good, put more lipstick on her or something? Or did the actresses, in Gloria Graham's case, I know she was obsessive about her, how she looked, and she stuffed the gauze up in her lip to puff it out to make
Yeah,
her look, early homemade Botox.
yeah.
Um, with Stanwyck, I'm not entirely sure what the deal was. Did she somehow think it was making her look younger? Or is that what the studio wanted to project? So I'd be very curious to know if there were any memos or something like saying, tell Stanwyck she's got to put more lipstick on or something. Uh, that's an interesting question to me. Uh, was it mandated by the studio or the producer of the film, or was it their idea? Okay.
Okay.
Who you're going now?
This is my. Oh, and I just want to say I really like Edmund O'Brien. That was the other thing
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
throw
yeah.
in there while we were at it. I
And
I
it's
think
so
he's
interesting because he had such a long career, and we're thinking of him in terms of film noir, but every so often I'm brought up short when I remember like Edmund O'Brien is in the Wild Bunch, and so
yeah.
are, William Holden and Robert Ryan and, but he's so grizzled and old in that movie. And he was also in, the Wells film that they've finally finished, Other Side of the Wind. Edmund O'Brien is in that as
Oh,
well,
oh,
and not much of a part, but there he is. He
yeah.
kept going. Okay, so
Okay. This is Jim from Hillsboro, Wisconsin. While a fine actor, I'm always confounded by Van Heflin's leading man roles as a love interest, as he was not good looking, to say the least. And you especially can weigh in on this. I mean, why is Joan Crawford still beautiful at the time of the films, so possessed and possessed? And it seems to me the roles in The Strange Love of Martha Ivers should be reversed. Kirk Douglas is a tough guy love interest for Robert Stanwyck as opposed to Van Heflin. Later in westerns such as Shane and 310 to Yuma, he was cast correctly as he was in active violence. Well, that's
well,
quite the head
that
the
okay, Jim.
slam on Van Heflin.
That's interesting.
I don't
I
know. If you don't,
guess. Well, what do you think?
well,
What's
my
your take on
favorite
Van Heflin?
my favorite romantic lead for him is Johnny Eager. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, they had so much chemistry.
yeah, that's
Uh,
yeah, that's
so
pretty
much
good.
that's the love story in that
Oh yeah, him and Robert Taylor.
movie.
That
Him and
was
Robert Taylor, just
yeah, and that was his
uh,
Oscar-winning performance.
and rightfully so. Yeah, I mean, and I also really liked what's the he did another movie with Barbara Stanwyck. Um, it's the one with Beverly Michaels, not small
Oh
but
yeah,
kind of
East Side, West Side,
East Side,
East Side,
West
West
Side.
Side. Yeah,
And I thought he was really charming, and I totally believed him and Stanwyck as a couple in that. I found their relationship really genuine.
well,
Yeah, I'm
I mean, it's so funny that this is the flip side of what we were saying about Alain Delon. Like
yeah,
he's so good looking that nobody expects him to play like a character. You know, he's too good looking to play certain roles, which is unfair, honestly. And likewise, I never, I don't quite get the thing about Van Heflin being, to say he was not good looking, to say the least. I mean, I don't know about that. I think there's a lot of women who find Van Heflin attractive. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a lot of men who find Van Heflin attractive as
Yeah.
well. But um, he just had, he to me he was a very underrated actor. I
Yeah.
still think the two most underrated actors in that era in Hollywood were probably Van Heflin and Arthur Kennedy. And neither
Arthur
of
Kennedy's a great
he's a
actor.
tremendous actor, and these guys just were perfect in every role. They could do anything. And neither of them are conventionally handsome,
Yeah.
but nor are they character actor types.
You're right.
They're so I'm not sure I agree uh, with what Jim is suggesting here. I just think Van Heflin, both of those guys had very lucky careers in that they could go either way. They could play a leading man, or they could just play some, like in Johnny Eager, they can play the second banana guy, or he's saying, the stoic husband in Shane, or you know, um, the cowardly guy in Act of Violence. But I don't know. It doesn't. I have no issue with Van Heflin at all, and
Yeah.
I honestly don't think. It would have worked the other way around as well in Martha Ivers. Big props to Kirk Douglas for playing that like as his debut role.
Yeah.
Because if
Sorry, guys. We have like an automatic light
it's
thing. This is going to go on
I
and
guess
off. My
so is
apologies.
it your movement that activates it? You're just going to have to jump up and down every so
I
often
guess
and to
so.
keep the
I mean, it just
lights on.
came on randomly a couple minutes ago. So we'll just,
Okay.
well, sorry, guys. We're just going to have to live with it.
Okay. Um, anyway, that's that. And of course, how can you say that about Van Heflin when he is 1/4 of that fabulous photograph of the Hollywood stars in the American Legion post in Hollywood in their tuxedos? It's Gary Cooper. Who is it? Gary Cooper, Clark Gable. Is it Jimmy Stewart and Van Heflin?
Oh,
And
wow.
they're all in tuxedos, and they're all at the bar drinking and laughing with each other, and it's just it's like the Four Kings in Hollywood or something. I mean, these guys look so good, uh, and Van Heflin is right in there with them. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. No, like I said, oh, by the way, speaking of Arthur Kennedy, like he was in this really weird giallo that I watched. It was so startling when he showed up. I'm like, Arthur Kennedy? Like, what the hell?
working actor. You know what I mean? Well,
Yeah.
that's funny. You see, you know, I love that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
weren't we just talking about the last time we did this? Weren't we talking about Joan Bennett popping up in
Oh yeah, she's
Suspiria?
in Suspiria. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's just so much fun watching these Italian films. You just
and
see these
and
people just showing up
Carol
in them.
Baker. Carol Baker
Oh,
did
she
some
did.
trashy Italian films.
Yeah, Spanish too. Yeah,
Spanish.
they were
Yeah.
actually Spanish, but some of them were filmed in Italy or parts were filmed in Italy. Yeah, but she
Oh.
did.
Okay, we just had a glitch. We're happy to see that the lights are back on for you, Anne. But there was a little glitch there when we were talking about Arthur Kennedy and Giallo and all that kind of stuff. I was trying to think of somebody else besides Carol Baker that had done some. But now we're just going to move on, and
Yeah.
hopefully we won't have any more light issues. We won't have
We'll see.
any glitches here. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so Eric sends in a question. He wants to know. It's a noir or not question, and it's about Daisy Kenyon, the 20th Century Fox film Daisy Kenyon. And Eric says, I felt all the way through it was melodrama, not noir. I'm a serious fan of Dana Andrews. Andrews' smile and his voice are so magnetic, his eyes so liquid and changeable. Why is he second tier old Hollywood? Okay. First off, Daisy Kenyon. Uh, it's a noir stained melodrama. That's what it is. Which without the murder in Mildred Pierce, that's a noir stained melodrama too. But with the murder, it's kind of more of a full fledged film noir. Um, and because it's part people, I think a lot of this stuff gets done because of the way the films get written about, right? So it's like directors like Otto Preminger and Fritz Lang, they become so synonymous with noir that a lot of stuff they made that isn't noir gets called that, right? Um, so Daisy Kenyon is certainly to me an example of that. As for Dana Andrews being second tier old Hollywood, that's only in hindsight. Dana Andrews was a star. I mean, he was a big star at 20th Century Fox, and it says more about. I guess it says more about the fact that he was reliable in genre pictures. You know, Dana Andrews made a lot of westerns. He made a lot of war movies. He made a lot of crime films. You know, other than something like The Best Years of Our Lives or the Oxbow Incident, a western, granted,
Yeah.
but based on a very famous American novel. You know, he didn't get like the A pictures, right? But that doesn't mean that he wasn't a big star. You know, I mean, John Garfield was a huge star, and he had a career very similar to Dana Andrews in a lot of ways. So, um, you know, that's just how it goes. That's like why nobody talks about Alan Ladd anymore when Alan Ladd was Paramount's biggest leading man of the 40s. But for whatever reason, the films just didn't, they weren't the films that the next generation of people who cared about older movies were writing about. And so they get less ink after their careers are over. But you know, certainly Dana Andrews is almost synonymous with film noir. You know, I think
Hmm.
it's like Robert Ryan and Richard Widmark. It's almost unfair that they're known more for their noir films than their
Yeah.
complete careers, you know,
Yeah.
because they did everything, you know. It it always kind of rubs me the wrong way when a lot of people who love noir, and I'm not being critical of our fan base here, but when they say, you know, he's a noir actor, because I guarantee you that Dana Andrews or Robert Ryan or Richard Widmark or God forbid Barbara Stanwyck or Joan Crawford or Ida Lupino, they would say, "What are you talking about? I played everything. You
Yeah.
know, I did everything that I could possibly do." The noir films are the ones that, for whatever reason, have stood the test of time and are what people more readily consume now from that era than the westerns or the war movies or anything like that. But you know, or just the regular melodramas.
Hmm.
You know, so that's the I love Dana Andrews, and I think he's one of the best actors of that period, but he was particularly well suited to noir because his style was suited to that kind of taciturn, tight-lipped character that you see in noir, guys who are hurt and they're closed up, you know. I mean, he was great at that. He, you know, he internalized so much on screen, which is a big part of being successful playing those characters.
Yeah. And I just want to throw in too, when you're talking about things are considered film noir that aren't, for me, it's like Clash by Night. That just drives me insane that people consider that a film noir. It's not.
Well, thank you for that, Anne, because that was exactly the film I was trying to think of when I mentioned Fritz Lang. It's like, you know, Otto Preminger with Daisy Kenyon.
Yeah.
Daisy Kenyon is not really a film noir, and Clash by Night with Fritz Lang. No, that's, you know, that's Clifford Odets, man. That's, you know, that's a
Sorry, I hate Clifford Odets so
well,
much.
it's a very verbose stage play, and
Yeah.
I'm telling you that that movie is that stage play is completely, or the film version of it is completely rescued by the actors.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Stanwyck is so good in that film, and Robert Ryan is as atrocious as that character is. He is great playing it, and Paul Douglas is great
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
film, and Marilyn is good
Yeah.
in that film, and so it's very very watchable. But man, is that just a simplistic drama, just overwrought, so overwrought. But the
Yeah.
actors pull it off. They really do.
Yeah, and I do, and also, I mean, Robert Ryan and Barbara Stanwyck's chemistry was off the
Mm,
frigging charts. I mean, just
yeah.
the scene where they kiss and she's like
Oh my God.
shoves her hand up the back of his
Yeah.
undershirt. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Pretty amazing. Pretty
yeah,
amazing. That
yeah,
was a lot of intensity going on in their scenes together.
yeah,
She could play those scenes just better than anybody. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
when
Well, because I mean, when she does them, she does. They're powerful and truthful, and somebody else, it would just be ridiculous. Like you wouldn't even buy it. But with her, it's like, and when she's being cynical too, I mean, I don't think there's anybody else quite as cynical as Stanwyck is. Like she can play that hardened, cynical woman
mm-hmm.
so well. It's
Yep,
amazing.
absolutely. And when she's the hardened, cynical woman, kind of interested, but she's going to be a challenge to the man,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
like that, like in Double Indemnity when Fred McMurray starts flirting with her,
Yeah,
and she's completely aware of what's going on, but she does that. I wonder if I know what you mean.
yeah.
And she is just like, excuse me, I am in control of this situation,
Yeah,
not you.
yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with that scene with Ryan when they're sitting outside the bar, on the with the ocean behind him. It's like, oh my God, that is so strong. Anyway, okay, moving along. Our buddy Doug in Silver Spring, Maryland, who I will probably see next month, says, Eddie, you've said you like the tongue-in-cheek TV spy shows the Avengers and the Wild Wild West. It's funny, I never really thought of the Wild Wild West as a spy show, but I
Yeah.
suppose it was. What's your opinion of one of the few dead serious TV spy shows, the UK series Danger Man, secret agent in the United States, with of course the great Patrick McGowan as John Drake, secret agent. I'm not going to sing the song, because they did in the States. They had, the theme song was great. Johnny Rivers, Secret Agent Man,
Yeah.
Secret Agent Man. Um, I like the show. I mean, I haven't seen all of them
Oh my
because,
God.
no, I only came to Danger Man after the Avengers, of course,
Yeah.
and after The Prisoner,
Yeah.
right? Because then you learned that, that The Prisoner was a whole riff on him playing John
Yeah.
Drake in Danger Man, uh, and it's funny, that it's like where they send the retired secret agents,
Yeah.
which I always imagined would be a great idea for. And I'm starting to see this pop up now. I remember a few years ago when, unfortunately, Alzheimer's started playing a part in my life or my mom's life, that I was thinking, what do they do with Secret Service agents who develop Alzheimer's?
Yeah.
There must be a place where they put them
Yeah.
so that they're no risk to the government, giving away secrets without realizing they're doing it and stuff like that. And I kind of imagined in Hollywood it would be a comedy about, like a rest home for spies.
Yeah. Yeah.
and and I'm sure this is coming up somewhere along the line,
Yeah.
with all the serious movies that have been made about coping with Alzheimer's disease. At some point there's going to be a comedy,
Yeah.
where this is and it would obviously, in this culture, it would revolve around spies or law enforcement or something.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway, I have a lot to say about this
okay,
question.
go,
Okay.
go, go, go.
I am a huge Patrick McGowan fan. Huge. And so I own all of them. And it's kind of interesting because John Drake was actually two series. There was the first series, which were like, I think half an hour, and then they went to the hour long ones. And they are all really great. Like they're all on my in my home collection because I'm just a really big fan of his. And then of course I love The Prisoner. I've watched that so many
Yeah.
times. But yeah, I mean they were very interesting because obviously it was a big time for spy stories in British television. And one of the really interesting things about it was Patrick McGowan was just very adamant about he wasn't going to have like a series of romances in those because that was against his principles. He was a very staunch Catholic. I don't know if people know that about him. So that was very interesting. It really kind of changed the so it wound up being very different from other spy shows at the time just because that was a very thing because he didn't want to be doing like the James Bond riff.
Right.
And I mean they're really good and it's kind of fun because it's you see there are all these different characters each week so you can also sort of spot kind of some actors who went on to have bigger careers in British television, showing up in small roles.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I really highly recommend the series to people. I think it's really great. And of course, Patrick McGowan also brought back a spy character for Columbo, which is the episode that he also, yeah, he directed that. Yeah, he directed that one. That was like his second appearance on Columbo. And it's very much a riff on him having played because he plays a spy in it. And so it's very much a riff on the fact that he had done all these um, spy roles
Right.
before. But yeah, but I mean, like I said, Patrick Bruin's just one of my all-time favorite actors. I just think he was like a tremendous actor.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I mean, he's like one of those guys that's always the best thing in whatever he
Oh
does.
yeah,
But without violating the dynamic of the ensemble and
yeah,
stuff. Like in a movie like Hell Drivers,
yeah,
everybody's great, but man, his
yeah.
his
He's so great.
performance in Hell Drivers is just incredible. Or you've seen the Basil Dearden film All Night Long.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have.
He's
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
fantastic in that
yeah,
as well. And he's just like you say, he's just good in everything. And I remember seeing him interviewed years ago. I think it was after The Prisoner became kind of a cultish thing because you'll
yeah.
recall you may not be old enough you didn't see it when it first appeared on TV. You're
No,
not that.
I saw it the first time when I was living in England when they ran it for the first time in England, and that's when I was in high
Oh, well,
school over
it
there.
was interesting because it was a summer replacement show here in the States. Like it had aired already in England.
Yeah.
And then CBS, I think it was CBS, bought it just like for 13 episodes to run during the summer.
Hmm.
It was like a replacement for something that it made absolutely no sense. I can't remember. It was like the Jackie Gleason show or
Yeah.
something that it was a summer substitute for. And it just like freaked people out. I mean, obviously, that, it was an instantly some people thought this is the greatest thing ever put on television, and other people were like checked out
Yeah.
immediately as soon as the ball starts drifting down the beach.
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
I'm out. I don't know what the hell's going on in this show. But I remember seeing him interviewed, and my God, he was so smart and so serious. He was such a
Hmm.
serious person.
He was. Yeah.
And I remember, that talking about The Prisoner was just this jumping off point for this conversation about the future of humanity.
Yeah.
And I remember the show ended with Patrick McGowan saying, because somebody said, "Are you scared of the future?" And he goes, "Man has already created the weapon that will destroy us all, and man has never created a weapon that he hasn't used." And it's
Yeah.
like end of show. It's like
Yeah.
we don't want to go on anymore.
Yeah. Well, and the kind of funny thing about The Prisoner is so every time I've rewatched it, the world's become more like the world of the village. I mean, it really is weird if you go back and because like I said, I've watched it over different points of time, and like it's very. I mean, it's amazing how much stuff that show predicted about the way the world is now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just amazing to me. So I think people now, when they go back and look at it, I think they'll be struck by that. But for me, having rewatched it, over the years, it's even more like, oh my God, we just keep moving and moving and moving towards that. It's
Yep.
really interesting.
Well, it clearly predicted, um, the Big Brother aspects of that show were kind of predicting the internet and social media and all this stuff, where you're watched, you're observed all the time. You may not realize it, but you are under surveillance all the time.
Yeah.
It's yeah, pretty scary. Pretty scary.
Yeah. And I just
Anyway,
want to say one other thing about Danger Man, or because you
please.
talked about the Secret Agent Man song.
Yeah.
The theme song. Okay, so when I was working at a video store on 15th Video in Seattle, I used to always go by the Starbucks. It was just half down the corner then there, like when I'd come on to shift on the weekends and grab something before I did my closing shift. And so there's a guy there. We got to be really good friends. It was one of the baristas. And so like every time I came in, he would start singing Secret Agent Man, specifically the version that David Hasselhoff did.
I didn't know that David Hasselhoff did a
Yeah, he
version.
covered it at one
I
point.
just knew Johnny Rivers.
Yeah, so Hasselhoff like at one point covered it. But so at one time, like I was meeting my boss because we were discussing what to buy for the store, Lyle. And so like Lyle and I walked into the Starbucks, and there was this other like cafe nearby that was really fancy that everybody else went to. So we walk in there, and my friend starts singing, of course, my theme song.
There's a man who lives a life of
For danger,
danger.
right? And
Everyone he meets, he stays a stranger. Yeah.
yeah. So he goes into it and stuff, and Lyle looks at me and says, "Oh, this is why you always go here instead. You have like a theme song that people sing to you when you come in."
That's great.
Yeah. Okay, so this is from Michael in Boston. My question is twofold. What classic noir remake were you initially excited about seeing based on the director and cast that was involved that fell short of your expectations, and which remake surprised you for exceeding your expectations that you now consider it a classic in its own right? For me, it was Night in the City that fell short, and The Deep End, based on the reckless moment that exceeded my expectation, is a real favorite, and to me, a perfect example of neo-noir at its best. I'll be curious to hear your answers.
Okay. Um, it's weird, but Michael, I well, here the only thing I would say Night in the City, definitely, except I didn't really have that high expectations for that film,
Yeah.
right? So it definitely fell short. I'm sorry to say, for various reasons. Um, given the talent involved in that, it should have been a lot better. But clearly, if you like the original, it's because it has that incredible Baroque noir style. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
that's to me, Night in the City, Dasson's Night in the City is like the high end. It's the pinnacle of noir style. Probably more than Out of the Past is Night in the City, and the remake has no style whatsoever. I mean, it's done in the plainest way possible with the expectation that the actors are so good they're going to carry it, but it doesn't work. It just
So
doesn't work.
where is it set?
Set in New York.
See, I can't like that is such a London story. Like I cannot see that
Yeah.
story taking place anywhere besides London. That's
They
just
just they
really
just
strange to
kept
me.
the character dynamics and the desperation of the central character, but that's De Niro is not right for that character. He
Yeah.
just is not, and I'd be curious to know what somebody who hasn't seen the original film thought of Night in the City.
Yeah.
It just did not work, and I completely agree with Michael's assessment of The Deep End, which is just a great film. Have you seen it with Tilda Swinton? And
No, it's been on my to watch list forever, but I still haven't watched it.
it's fantastic. She is great. The whole thing is great. That's uh, Scott McGee and David Siegel who did that movie, and they're very creative, inventive filmmakers who clearly have a deep appreciation for noir, and they're somewhat experimental filmmakers too. You wouldn't necessarily know it from, they were experimental filmmakers. You wouldn't know it from the deep end necessarily, but they did a picture called Suture,
Oh yeah.
which is really, it's in black and white, and it's very odd because it's about twins, but one of the actors is white and one of the actors is black,
Yeah.
playing twins, and it's like they're messing with your mind. And I like that movie very much. Uh, but the deep end is just fantastic, and I love the fact that they rewrote it so that it's a the son is gay, right? So instead of it being a daughter and this older man, this lecherous older man, it's that her son is gay in a relationship with an older guy, and somehow the whole thing just works better in terms of the writing. It actually works a little better than the original film. Um, it's not that I had a hard time believing the relationship between that young girl and the older man, but there was just something more. Uh, there was more of a dynamic between a mother having to protect two secrets
Hmm.
in this film, and it was great. So those are good. I wish I could come up with something else, but I will say that if a remake that didn't bother me that much was Barbet Schroeder's remake of Kiss of Death with Nicolas Cage playing the Richard Widmark part. I mean, he's not Richard Widmark, but he is Nicolas Cage. So
Yeah.
he brings a certain degree of weirdness to the performance that I thought was pretty effective.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a pretty decent remake as well. I mean, the ones that are bad, I tend to not try to not watch them or focus on them. I mean, I remember watching Against All Odds, the Out of the Past remake,
Yeah.
and it was impossible for me to judge it on its own terms. Impossible. So I'm not even going to be critical of it because I can't. All I can, at every step of the way, all I could say was, it was so much better in the original. This worked
Yeah.
so much better in the original. Uh, and that was like, I question why Taylor Hackford wanted to remake it.
Yeah.
It would be like remaking Double Indemnity and calling it Double Indemnity. Well, he didn't say it was out of the past. Well, I take it back. His problem was that he did say it was out of the past. He said inspired by, because he didn't want to be sued,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's so close. But like Double Indemnity has been remade 500
So,
times.
yeah,
You
it
know,
has.
they just don't, they're just not stupid enough to call it Double Indemnity,
Yeah.
right? Uh, yeah. So there you
Yeah.
go. Okay. Uh, here's Isaki or Lisaki from Finland. Uh, says, Dear Eddie and Ann, which of the film noir movies have you in your spare time? What, I guess that's a joke. In your spare time,
I didn't realize that's part time.
watched repeatedly the most. Clearly, English is Isaki's second language, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much. If I tried to write you a question, finish,
Yeah, not gonna
I can't even
happen.
imagine how that's going to work out. And what made you want to watch and return to these specific noir movies again? Please don't take into account the noir movies that you have to watch again for your work related assignments. Well, I have to say, at this point, virtually everything I do is a work related assignment. So, uh, anyway, I got to think about this. What do you have ones, Anne, that you just like the
I mean, it's
classics you go back to just to watch because you just want to watch it again?
I mean, the Maltese Falcon. I know I've said that so many times. It's probably, I mean, really, it's realistically, it's probably my favorite film of all time. I love that
There
movie.
you go.
And it just never gets old for me because just the performances are so great in that film. It's so well written, very faithful to the um, original novel. It's John Huston's directorial debut, and it's just great. It's just, I don't know. I just love it. And it's like, and yeah. And if it's playing in a theater, which it does from time to time, then I will always go see it. It's so much fun to see that on the big screen.
Yep.
But that's just, I
Yep.
never get tired of that movie because I really do think it's a perfect movie. There's just nothing I would change about it. And please don't comment in the comments that Mary Astor isn't sexy. You're not the first person
Oh,
to say that, and it makes me
please,
insane.
please.
I'm sorry you don't want a boner, okay? I don't care.
Yeah,
She's
I
great in that film.
she's fantastic.
Sorry.
She's the is she the best liar in film noir in the
Yeah, yeah,
movies? You know,
absolutely. I mean, she's great. And just the way oh, I love it, you know?
it is a fantastic performance. It's a fantastic performance,
Yeah,
and if you've seen just this is not in any way suggesting anything about Mary Astor, who I love on
yeah,
film. But it is fun to realize that John Huston did want to cast Geraldine Fitzgerald
yeah,
in that role. And when you watch Three Strangers, you can kind of see, oh man, she would have been good. She would have
yeah,
really been good as Bridget O'Shaughnessy.
yeah,
But that's not taking anything away from Mary Astor, who is great
yeah.
in that film.
Plus, and then
Um,
the delight of Madeline Kahn playing her in The Chief
yeah.
Detective, which is one of my favorite comedic performances of all time. She's so great in that.
Well, Madeline Kahn she was
Oh, she was
just
amazing.
spectacular. She really was.
Amazing.
I wonder if, yeah, I guess she got a lot of work. I mean, I think, I mean, certainly people like Mel Brooks
Yeah,
understood what they had in her, but she was like a classic comedic actress. You know, she was not a comedian, she was a comedic actress, you know, and boy, she was great. Anyway,
yeah.
um, okay, I mean, the movies that I have watched more than any other, and it's impossible to separate this from like, well, these aren't work related because I've seen them so many times. I don't have to watch them again to remind myself about anything. You know, I watch In a Lonely Place once a year. I watch that film because it's a film that you grow up with. You know, I saw it the first time when I was 15 or 16 years old, and I watch it all the time because I understand more of it
Yeah.
every time I watch the film. I love Crisscross. Of the classic noirs, Crisscross is probably the one that just scene by scene, it's like I can't look away because, oh, this scene. Oh, now it's this scene. Oh, I love this part of the film, you know. So uh I probably have seen Psycho more than any movie,
Hmm.
uh, you know, because I got into that very early on because Hitchcock is the director that gets everybody who gets serious about film. It's Hitchcock that kind of starts you down that road. I don't know if it's somebody else now, some
Yeah.
younger filmmaker now that does that, but it was Hitchcock in our generation, right?
Yeah.
So I remember just watching Psycho over and over and over again to understand how it was made. Um, and it now qualifies as a film noir, I think. And um, you know, I watch Mulholland Drive every time if it's on. Oh, God damn it!
I
Now I
know.
have to watch this for the next two
Yeah.
hours and something.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, not that I'm disappointed, but it's like I cannot look away from that movie. It is the most spellbinding film I can think of. So, I mean, those are the ones that I think I can probably watch more than anything else. The Asphalt Jungle I could probably watch,
Mm.
or Rififi as well.
Yeah.
You know, even though you know they don't get away with it, you, you
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
every single time
Yeah.
you watch it, it's like maybe this time, maybe this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think too, there's some film noirs too. When you go back and watch, like, I think both Sunset Boulevard and Double Indemnity are two films where when I rewatch them, I'm just like, oh my God, it's so like
yeah,
somehow I've forgotten how, I mean, like intellectually, I know that I remember that these are great films, but those are two films when you watch them again, like you get struck all over again with what really great films that they are.
It's funny. The last 2 or 3 times I've watched Double Indemnity, it's been for Edward G. Robinson.
Oh God, he's
Like
so great in
he's
it.
so
He's so
freaking
great.
fantastic in that movie that it's like I'm just going to keep watching because I got to get to the scene, where he does his thing about where he rattles off the suicide, death by that, death by falling, death by that. He's just so incredibly great, and
Yeah.
his relationship with his boss is fantastic, right? I mean, that's anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. I think is it who's reading that
I'll
last
read it.
question? Okay.
This is from Richard in New York. Why is neo-noir's top USA city Miami? What is the best New York City noir film? What is the top noir city in Asia slash Africa slash South America slash Europe? What is the small city that has had a top noir film? So one at a time.
Wow.
I know. I just figured that I would do them all at once.
This
So, I
is a
mean,
lot.
this was brought in as one question. Usually I split questions up, but this is one where I thought it would just work best for you.
Okay.
So, why is Neo Noir's top US city Miami? Why do you think that is?
Because there's a lot of crime there,
There you go. Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot. I mean, that's the expectation. It's a crossroads city,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of crime. There's a sexiness to it
Yeah. Yeah.
that attracts filmmakers. The weather's always good. Do not
Yeah.
discount the practical reasons for this,
Yeah.
right? You can shoot there or set something there or shoot in that all year round. It's like
Yeah.
LA, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's why LA is the film capital of the world, is because the weather was good 12 months a year. And
Yeah.
the same thing kind of applies in Miami, right? So it just makes sense, right? And then once Miami Vice, like, you know, catapulted it into that position, I mean,
Hmm.
people just, I won't get into the politics of it all and, like, Florida man and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That crazy shit happens in Florida,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. The best New York City noir film. I mean, there are a lot of them, but I'm afraid that Mark Hellinger would come out of the grave and kill me if I didn't say The Naked City.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
it is one of the New York films, not just
yeah,
film noir
because
set in New York,
it
the New York
clear
film.
it clearly set its intention was to be the ultimate New York film.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give him bonus points for that. I mean, there are great films, like Edge of Doom is not a great film. It's not even a good film, but it's a really good New York film.
Yeah.
I mean, the feel for New York in that movie is fantastic. Or something like Guilty Bystander is a great New York film, and again, not a particularly good film.
And Sweet
Um,
Smell of Success.
oh my God, yes, of course. But that's almost a Broadway.
Yeah, it's a specific part
It's
of New
Times
York.
Square. It's a
Yeah.
Times Square film. And for that matter, The French Connection is a great New York film. Just
Oh
for the
yeah.
feel of New York, for the way they use the city, it's fantastic. Now, as for the other, I can't, Asia, Africa, South America, Europe. Well, in Asia, it's probably going to be something set in Tokyo, right? I mean
Yeah.
that, but I don't know. I can't pick one film. I haven't seen that enough to say that's the one. In
Yeah.
Africa, I have no idea. I mean,
Yeah.
uh,
I don't. Yeah.
I kind of want to pick something that is indigenous as opposed to something like Bertrand Tavernier's Coup de Torchon,
Yeah.
which is set in South Africa, but it wasn't written as
Yeah.
such. It's a Jim Thompson novel, but it's a French film set in South Africa.
Yeah.
Um, and Europe is just way too vast. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's I can't possibly pick. Like, what's the greatest film, noir set in Paris? Like, no way. You
Yeah.
can't pick that. You know.
Yeah. And I
And
think also with Europe too, I mean, it's just sort of like, I mean, you could just argue all of Scandinavia because of the sheer amount
yeah,
of
yeah,
crime fiction set there, but not particularly in cities there. They use
yeah,
the wild landscape in those films, not so much
right,
the
right.
cities.
Yeah, and the smallest city that's had a top noir film, I don't know because I have to know populations of cities, and I mean if you mean like a small town noir, there's hundreds of those, but as for like a city, I don't know because you might be surprised. Like some of these cities are way bigger than you might think. Like you
Yeah.
can't say, something like Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is a huge city. It's like New York, so that's not a. There have been great films
Yeah.
set there, but it's not small.
I mean, well, there's like San Francisco,
Well, yeah,
Florence,
that's
and there's
that's a small. You're right. San
San
Francisco of
Francisco is
all
small.
these cities is like the smallest one.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
only
for
seven
my
by seven.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 7 square miles, and I remember growing up, it was like we didn't even have a million people.
Yeah.
There weren't even a million people in San Francisco when I was growing up.
Yeah.
It was like 750,000 people in the city of San Francisco, and everybody was like, it's too crowded because the city's so small. So there,
Mm,
thank you, Anne. You've solved the problem. The
yeah.
smallest in terms of square miles
Yeah.
is San Francisco. It has to be San Francisco.
Yeah.
So that would be it. And then you can pick from the litter of what's your favorite. Is it the
Yeah.
Maltese Falcon? Is it the Lady from Shanghai? Is it Woman on the Run? Is it Vertigo? All those are in the smallest city. So thank you for leading us to that, Anne. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. So anyway, so those are our questions. Now we're going to do our. Oops, you just disappeared. That's no good. There you are. But your light went
Casey?
out again. I
Yeah,
can
my
see
light
you.
went out
Yeah.
a while ago.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
should have just like not even bothered with the overhead lights and just shot in
Oh well.
darkness. Oh well.
Um. Okay. So let's talk about stuff we've seen recently.
So I saw The Substance, which I really
Okay.
wanted.
Horror film. I knew you would be right there. I knew you'd be there, and so now I can get your opinion about it.
Yeah, so I saw I saw the trailer and immediately stopped watching it because like I want to see this because it just immediately reminded me of Seconds, the film with
Yes.
Rock Hudson. And by the way, I
Yes.
think they'd make an amazing double feature like Seconds and The Substance. I would love to see them as a double feature.
Now you're thinking like a programmer, Ann. Good
Yeah,
job.
yeah. And it was very good. The Substance was a very, very good film. But because I purposely did not watch any reviews or read any reviews or anything of that, I did not realize how hardcore body horror it turned into. So I would say to people that, oh yeah, I was intrigued by the trailer, and they really kind of opened it wider than I personally would have. But so I would forewarn people that it's like got Cronenberg level body horror, like The Color of Outer Space body horror. I don't know if you've seen The Color of Outer
I am
Space with
not. I
Nicolas
am
Cage.
not.
Oh my God, it's a lot. Um, but yeah, I mean, I thought it was
So I won't be seeing this one with Kathleen.
no, 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 which I think when I messaged you about it, I said Kathleen will not like this.
Yeah.
But it's really good, right? Because, Demi Moore plays this, she has like this fitness show, this aerobic show on television. And the day she turns 50, they fire her because she's 50 and she's too old. And what I found interesting was in that scene, the outfit she's wearing is almost identical to one from Jane Fonda's from one of her workout videos, by the
Oh,
way.
okay.
So
Okay.
that like
Very good.
immediately clicked in my head. So anyway, so she get fired. So she gets offered The Substance, which, is going to basically give you a clone of yourself who's like a better you kind of thing, younger, better, whatever.
But is this you
Yeah.
or is this another you?
It's another you, but it's you because you are one, which they say
So what
like,
happens to
yeah,
you when the other you, like when the
you're asleep for 7 days and you're supposed to
okay,
flip
okay.
over every 7 days, right? So the old you, 7 days, and she's out and about,
But your
and then
consciousness is in this other your
well, you could
consciousness is in the other being or no?
no, but you're still the same person. And
Okay.
that's kind of the point of the story, right? Because like the people that make the substance say that repeatedly, you are one, you're one. So basically what happens is this other person who's young and beautiful goes to like in and basically takes over her old show, gets hired to maybe replace her and
Okay.
stuff. But
So she
yeah,
becomes a rival to herself.
exactly.
Uh,
Exactly. And so
yeah.
there is this rivalry, but the thing is it's still her. And that's what she's not realizing, that she is doing this rivalry to herself,
Okay.
because this is her. But and I thought it was very good. I mean, there's a lot, and it's really funny too, because I guess maybe some people were like kind of like going off about the nudity in it. And it's just like, this is literally the point, because there's a lot of the younger her, there's a lot of just sort of
Who is played by Margaret Qualley, right?
who's very, very good in it.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a lot of gratuitous shots of her body and stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, that's the point. That's the whole
And
point of
I
the
think it
story.
is important in situations like that. I do think it is important to just point out that the film was written and directed by a woman,
Yeah,
correct?
exactly. Yeah, I think if a guy had done it, I think there would, I mean, there was still pushback, and stuff. It's like, yeah, but that's the whole point of the story. What are you missing about? Because I don't like gratuitous nudity and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I
No, I
don't.
think
And
it
and I think it's,
definitely takes you out of when you're thinking about the body, unless that's the point. I don't get the purpose of it, you know.
yeah, exactly. And like I said, this was the key thing, because that's what it was, really about. And yeah, I thought it was really good film. But I also, like I said, like at the end of it, like I felt like I had a concussion. Like, should I do a concussion protocol tonight? Because like my brain was
Wow.
fuzzy. And yeah, and
Well, that's
for man,
what you're describing. I'd be curious to know if I'm embarrassed I can't remember the filmmaker's name. I'd be curious to know if she saw Seconds and was inspired by it, because the premise sounds identical.
it is, it is. That's why I was saying it's sort of like a distaff seconds. Yeah, and that's what intrigued me to see it. Because as soon as I saw the beginning, like the beginning of the trailer, it's like, oh, I'm seeing this because it totally makes me think of seconds. And I think they'd make a great pair up, because I wasn't really planning on watching The Substance again because it was a lot, but I really, really would like to see it, like watch seconds and then watch that
Yeah.
directly
I mean,
after
obviously
and
in
just them
Seconds it's
together.
the same person. There isn't a clone. It's
Yeah.
the same guy.
But yeah, I
Um
mean, it's like the whole thing because it's about aging and stuff like this. And
right,
yeah,
exactly.
and I think that sometimes, because in this, I mean, a lot of people have been talking about this in terms like of a woman's experience and blah blah blah. But then that was interesting to me too, because I'm also sort of the opinion that the Vindication of the Rights of Woman by Mary Wollstonecraft was written in the early part of the 19th century. And honestly, if you're a woman at this point, you're buying into all this shit. You know what I mean? Like at some
Yeah.
point, you have to take some agency over that. But then again, but she's in an industry that very much is about that. And also one of the things I really liked about it. So the guy who fires her and hires the other woman, was interesting to me is that he's being really sexist, but not sexual, because he keeps saying to the young one, like he's very paternalistic towards the young woman. He doesn't like make a pass at her or anything like that. That's just kind of which I found rather interesting with that character. Like it's the pretty girls must smile. It's much more of sort of a
It's about
patronizing
money.
thing.
It's about money, right?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
exactly. And this is what people want. And that's what people want. They want this pretty young thing, and for her to be a certain way and have a certain image. And yeah, I really thought it was like a really good film. But like I said, and and it is an art film, but like I said, people need to know that it's like serious, serious body horror.
It was
So
interesting when I saw
yeah.
the trailer for it. I very much. It's great that you pointed out the Seconds connection, because I didn't see that when I watched the trailer. I thought, wow, this looks like a Stanley Kubrick movie. When I watched the trailer, I mean, just the compositions and the way the whole thing was staged. So
Yeah, yeah.
it clearly felt like an art film, like
Yeah.
the wide angle lenses and the all white tile bathroom and everything.
And there's
It was
definitely homages to Kubrick in the film.
yeah, that's what I got from it. And that was so I'm definitely going to see it, and
Yeah.
I hope I see it sooner than later. The body horror stuff is, if it has to go all the way for me to enjoy it, because then it's like this is so far out there that it's like I can grapple with that, I can deal with this. If it's just like kind of, then it gets queasy and uncomfortable, because it's like, this isn't arty, this is just uncomfortable,
Yeah,
you
and it's
know
definitely like because it is sort of queasy at first, like pretty queasy, but then by the end is so friggin' over the top that you
yeah.
sort of can
did you
relax
like
into
did you
it.
see did you see the Neon Demon?
No, I have not seen the Neon Demon.
Because I have a feeling they're similar. They're certainly about the same thing, like the quest for perfection and beauty and all this stuff, and what women are expected to go through to achieve that. And I wasn't a huge fan of the Neon Demon. I mean, I
Yeah.
I watch Refn's movies, Nicholas Winding Refn's films, and I rarely like them, but he wins because I watch them all the way through, and they're very compelling. I even like watched Only God Forgives, and it was like, I can't believe how weird this movie is and how upsetting and uncomfortable it is. But you know better than just some piece of trash. I don't think
No,
he
no,
makes
I'm
I don't
not,
think he makes
yeah.
trash. He just
No, no.
makes really uncomfortable, upsetting movies. And he
Yeah,
does it
yeah.
gleefully. I think what a lot of people don't like about him is he does it kind of gleefully. Like, he knows that this is going to freak people out and upset them, and he kind of wallows in that. He enjoys it.
Yeah, and I definitely have I mean, I'm not I mean, there's a couple of his films I really love. Like I love Pusher 2.
Yeah.
And I love Bleeder. Like Bleeder is just like one would I think that would go in one of my all-time favorite films. I just think that that's
Okay.
such a great film. I think part of that also maybe because a good hunk of it is set in a video store, so it's just like
Okay. Okay.
that's part of me, and I really relate to
There
Mickelson's
you go.
character. Yeah, I go again in the dark. Um,
It's kind of good
Mickels,
noir lighting, though. This is
yeah,
good
it
lighting on you
is.
right
It's
now.
good
Yeah.
one, yeah, yeah. But Mickelson's character, Lenny, is just his life was so similar to mine at that period of my life too that there's a huge relatable for me. I really relate to his character a lot, and that I think because of that.
Well, I'm going to share my interesting story. I'll try to make this somewhat brief. Um, but I recently had the pleasure of interviewing Francis Ford Coppola on TCM, obviously as part of the
Oh yeah, because he's
because he's promoting Megalopolis,
yeah.
and it was such an interesting story how this whole thing happened, that I'm going to. This is the only place I'm going to say this or share it. So the folks who are our loyal viewers get this as like an
Yeah,
exclusive behind the
there you
scenes
go.
thing. But it was so interesting because I was going to the Telluride Film Festival, and there are all kinds of movies that I saw at Telluride that haven't even come out yet that I could tell you about. But I'm going to talk about this instead. Um, so they said, uh, can you get back to the Bay Area from Telluride? People who don't know, Telluride is up in the mountains of Colorado. It's like it takes a long time to get there and a long time to get back. And um, they said, because we want you to interview Coppola at his winery in Napa this was like September 4th or something. And I was scheduled to come back from Telluride on, like, I can't remember, the second or the third or something like that. And it was really a close call, right? Because of all the travel involved and changing plans and all this stuff. But I said, do I get to see Megalopolis before we talk? Right.
Yeah.
And people should know that these days, the way this works is that they always just send you a link, right? So that you can watch a watermarked version of the film on your computer or whatever, right? That's kind of how the business works now. You get a link to watch something that's watermarked so that you can't copy it and sell it or anything like that. But Coppola was like, no, no, you don't get to, you have to see it in a theater. And I said, well, I don't have a lot of time to do this, right? It would have to be on this Thursday because we're doing the interview on Wednesday morning and I'm flying back late Monday night, right? So it was so amusing because I said, well, here's where I live and there's all these theaters and knock yourself out if you can rent a screen in one of these theaters for an afternoon. And then, right. So I'm at Telluride, I'm doing my thing and I'm packing up and I'm coming home and it's like, well, Francis says it has to be an IMAX theater. And so it's like, okay, there are IMAX theaters near me. Yeah, but there were none that they could actually rent for an afternoon.
Yeah.
So it ended up that I had to go to Fairfield, California. It was 105 degrees.
Oh,
And a car was sent to pick me up. And I TCM paid for the car,
yeah.
to drive me up there to watch the movie.
Yeah.
I was the only person, it was like it. Well, my producer of Noir Alley, Courtney O'Brien, was also with me.
Yeah.
And it was the two of us.
Yeah.
There were more security guards than, there were like 4 security guards to make sure we didn't take out an iPhone and record anything. And anyway, so that was my experience. And, and I liked it.
All right.
I really did like this film. And, we could do an entire episode on how much I detest social media and reading people declaring things about this film without having seen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Or having seen it and they're just waiting for the shit that they can pick on.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Yeah.
Right. So I saw this movie and it was very much like what we're talking about throughout this episode is like, what is it that you expect from a movie? Right. And this movie is not easy. It is very, very challenging, but it very much, a couple of takeaway things from it. It's a comic book movie without superheroes. I mean, and I said that to Coppola and he said, that's exactly what it is. I mean, Megalopolis is Gotham City, but Batman isn't coming to save anybody. Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, visually, his imagination was very much like what I grew up with, reading science fiction and reading comic books and all this stuff. We had a long talk about our mutual early comic book influences and things. And, it's a film you kind of swim in. You don't fight with it and say, this isn't making sense. What about that? Why is this guy not to, it's just like, he creates this world that you just have to kind of plunge into and swim around in. And if you kind of just go with it, it's very, very entertaining. And it, there's a naivete about it that I found very refreshing in the dynamics with the characters and just the fact that he was tackling like the future of civilization. Light subject, but he dares to do that. And I hate the fact that so many people are being, to my mind, unnecessarily critical of the film because I'm sensing a lot of ageism. Like he's an old man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, he's drunk on his power. He's an old man. And it was interesting because he said to me at one point, I said, does it bother you that people are already like trashing the movie and they haven't seen it? And he says, the thing that really bothers me is when people call it a passion project.
Yeah.
He says, I've only made passion
Yeah, I was gonna
projects,
say I don't.
He
He's
says,
never done something for hire. I mean, he worked
well,
for
he has.
Corman.
He has
I mean, he was
done
worked for Corman.
he has done a few things
Yeah,
where he has kind of treated it like, because he obviously was hurt when he would make his big art spectacles
yeah,
and they would fail, then it would be like, oh, screw it. What I really should be doing is making, Peggy Sue Got Married or Gardens of Stone or, something that's like a traditional, easy to deal with film instead of Apocalypse Now or One from the Heart or,
yeah.
um,
But
but
Peggy
he's
Sue Got Married is like, I mean, it's
it,
really
it
almost, it's like an
it's a
art
really
film. I mean, it's
it's
got
a
such a
really
depth
great
to it.
film.
It's a
It's a
great
really, really
movie.
great
Yeah,
film.
yeah. And it
Uh,
says so much, and there's so much. Yeah, I mean,
but
because
an
with somebody else, though,
easier,
I could have seen that it would have been nothing. You're right. I mean, if someone,
yeah,
a different type of director, that film would not be what it is.
yeah. But you
He
could
put a
see the
lot
way
into
that
it.
movie was sold. It was like
Yeah, yeah,
people in Hollywood could grasp it.
yeah,
They
yeah,
and they
yeah,
they didn't immediately hate it. Like, what are we
yeah,
supposed to do with this thing? So to me, it's like clear that Hollywood wants this film to fail because he's daring to, like, I can do this without you guys.
yeah,
And Hollywood is saying, no, you can't. No one can do this. No one can exist without us. And it's like, oh, bullshit.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, they can, you know. And
yeah,
I wish I had $120 million that I could afford to lose,
yeah.
you know. But that doesn't make me critical of Francis Coppola. It makes me think, why are people being mean to him when he's putting his money where his mouth is?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
his money. It's his
yeah,
money. He earned it.
yeah,
If he wants to spend it making a folly of this art film, why not? You
yeah.
know, so
But
you
I
know,
mean, but that's like what John Cassavetes did, right? He
yeah,
acted in all these films, including some really terrible films, so he could make his own
right,
movies. And he just
right.
funded his own films because he didn't want to be beholden. He could do whatever the hell he wanted,
And it
and
reminded,
and he was completely outside the Hollywood system.
yes, yeah. Well, that's why they
Yeah,
hate Coppola as well, because Coppola basically succeeded by leaving Hollywood.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
right, since the '70s, he hasn't been working in Hollywood, but he continues to be, this legendary filmmaker. And it was just, I just really enjoyed the film. It reminded me of, and it was a bit of time travel involved that I really appreciated because I haven't felt this way in a movie theater in a long time. That it took me back to when I was a kid, like when I was 16 or 17, and I'd go to the movies, and that would have been in the 1970s. There were so far fewer constraints on filmmakers in the 1970s than there are now,
Yeah.
right? So the society has progressed, with the internet and all this stuff, but the filmmaking has not in this
Hmm.
country. Filmmaking has really not progressed that much. It's receded.
Hmm.
It's like been dumbed down to an incredible degree. And so I'm watching this movie, and the film it reminded me of, not because it's similar, but it because of Anything Is Possible, was when I saw John Borman's Zardoz when I was like a
Oh yeah,
teenager.
yeah.
And Zardoz was like, you're sitting in the movie theater, like, what in the hell am I watching? Right? James Bond is in like a loincloth, and he's, and I mean, it was imagination so extreme, the floating head and all this stuff. And it was like, what is going on here? That that's what Megalopolis reminded me of. It's
Yeah.
like, I have no idea what's going to happen next in this film. It's off the hook, and it was like very exciting to me. And the other thing that Coppola said to me that I really appreciated was, I said, and you run a risk when you ask questions like this. I said, there's stuff in the movie like, did you run out of money, or was this intentional? Like, there's some bad rear projection in the film,
Yeah.
right? And you would think in this day and age, and I
Yes.
use I use bad improperly. There's some obvious, let's put it that way. There's some obvious back projection in the movie. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking this has got to be intentional on his part
Yeah.
because the world
Yeah.
we live
Yeah.
in today,
Yeah.
we can do back projection right here on Zoom.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
where I wouldn't be able to tell if I was in that room or not, So it's intentional. But then when people just criticize it as like, my God, it's so amateurish and blah, blah, blah. It's like, this is clearly what he's doing. And
Yeah.
he said, and I love this, he said, I wanted it to feel like a handmade spectacle.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, yeah, I get that entirely. Like when you watch these movies that are corporate made movies, there is an army of special effects people doing all these effects, and the end result is pretty soulless.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This movie, with all of the effects and everything, it is clearly one man's vision.
Yeah.
Like regardless of how much effort was put into it, or what, is the Madison Square Garden scenes, is that CGI or what is it?
Yeah.
What it is the end result feels like one man's imagining, which is kind of rare these days, So, and that's why I said it felt to me like a comic book movie, because I love comic books because I have favorite artists. This person draws this way. Jack Kirby draws this way. Steve Ditko draws this way. I love being able to identify that. And that's what this felt like to me. It didn't feel just like, oh yeah, this is just CGI. This is just CGI. This is all CGI. It's like, no, these are very particular visuals that you don't really know what this is. Is this CGI? Is this a practical effect? Is this a green screen? It doesn't matter. It just all felt like one person's imagining, which was great.
Yeah, and I think
that's my review of Megalopolis.
Yeah, there's a couple things I wanted to say. One was it's kind of funny that twice in this program we've talked about like people kind of nitpicking flaws or whatever. And that actually happened with the substance. Like two different people talked about like when this Sue, which is the clone, if you want to call her that, comes out and gets hired, like a couple of people said like she doesn't have a paper trail. And I was just like, she was literally birthed out of a woman's back. And the unrealistic thing to you is that she doesn't have a paper trail. By the way, you can hire someone without their papers. It's just, it's not a problem unless the government checks all your I-9s for every employee, which will happen occasionally, but probably not. So that actually really doesn't matter. But also that was just funny to me. I mean, I can't believe this is the thing that you're hung up on. And I think in terms of like vision and effects and stuff like that, I know I keep saying this, but it really is interesting how much like horror films are someone's vision, because there's so much. The ones now, the past 5 years have been amazing in the genre. I mean, the stories are really interesting, but also the fact that this is the genre where practical effects are still probably, I'd say about 90%.
There you go. Like that. Yeah.
About 90% of the effects in a horror film are still practical effects. And it really does make a difference because CGI just has not
it
aged
does because
well.
because you get that human element to it, which is what adds to the scariness and the impact of the films. Is it feels real, it feels tactile and human, as opposed to science fiction special effects, which are clearly done in a computer. It's very interesting. It's funny too, because the other thing about social media that I can't stand anymore, because everybody just has to weigh in immediately, like the race to weigh in about the film. And then if I, and I'm very, very close to giving up on social media entirely, because I can't stand people who seem to eager to be lemmings.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody writes something about a film, and obviously in this case it's Megalopolis I'm talking about, And then somebody writes like 2 paragraphs about it, and somebody says, "Thank you for saving me the time and money."
Yeah.
And it's like, seriously? Like, you're so shallow that you're not going to go and make up your own mind about this? And
Yeah.
and the other day, I not name dropping here, but I had lunch with Phil Kaufman, the director, the other day, and Phil had just seen Megalopolis,
Yeah.
and he said he went home, and David Thompson, David Thompson, the film writer,
Yeah.
uh, he sent Phil an email, and he said, "So what did you think? Spill the beans." And Phil wrote back, "The beans are still cooking." And
Yeah.
I loved that expression, because it's like, I don't really have a snap judgment to make on this movie. I'm thinking about what I saw, right? Because it's a lot to take in, you know, and I just do not understand. Like, look at us, and we've talked about films that we've watched, dozens and dozens of times. I say, In a Lonely Place, every time I watch it, I see something else.
Hmm.
What is with people today having to make a final judgment on something within minutes? I
Yeah.
mean, I can tell you that people will go see Megalopolis and immediately decide, oh, this is awful.
Yeah.
Because what, they don't like Larry Fishburne's voiceover, or they don't like an effect, or something. Oh, this is terrible. What is so freaking important in their life that they can't just sit and watch it and let the movie happen on its own terms? Like, what is so freaking hard about that? But
Yeah. Yeah.
this.
No, and like with the substance, like I'm still thinking about it because there's different aspects of it because like I thought about the film itself, and then I did write about it on Facebook mainly to give people a heads up that it's really got some intense body horror because I felt like that
Right.
maybe wasn't, really emphasized enough. But also, and then it made me think about aging and how I feel about aging, and then it also made me think about like one of the things that finally came to me like a week later was I started thinking about Jane Fonda because I told you that she's wearing Jane Fonda's outfit from one of Jane Fonda's
Yeah.
video. And I thought about how different Jane Fonda's aging has been than this character. Like Jane Fonda did not think that all her worth was her body and her looks, and that she
She
was
did
able.
get work done. She did
Oh
get
no,
work
no, she
done.
definitely get work done. I mean, but she definitely also, I mean, what other woman her age
Yeah.
has a hit series on Netflix with Lily
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Tomlin? I mean, and also, but I think also if she had that thing that happened where she got very caught into the feminist movement when it was really hitting. So her world really opened up, and she's also been extremely honest about her eating disorder. She was bulimic
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. But it just goes, but she had an inner life, right? So even though she was very much objectified by Hollywood, it's not like she wasn't objectified from Hollywood
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But she also, and that's sort of what's missing in this character is she doesn't have an inner life. Everything
Right.
is her outer shell. Anyway, so like I said, I mean, like
Well,
I said,
those
it's
actresses are extraordinary, and they are to be totally celebrated.
yeah.
The actresses who have managed to go on and have long careers where it was all about how beautiful they were in their youth.
Hmm.
Obviously we're talking about Barbarella here.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um, that was part of her career. An actress like Catherine Deneuve still making movies.
Yeah.
She's a
Yeah.
living legend in France. Helen Mirren,
Mm, yeah.
right? I mean, they were all like, the sexiest women on earth we're
Yeah.
talking about here. And then as they got older, it was just like, yeah, and then you change. And then
Yeah.
then I focus on other aspects of who I am,
Yeah.
which is so vital. I presume the substance gets into social media stuff because the social media pressures on people today, because now you don't even have to be a celebrity. You just have to be on social media to become totally obsessed with, I'm on TikTok and I have to look a certain way and I'm an influencer, and and it's just like, shit, this is also crazy to me.
Yeah, and I think too, no, the substance doesn't get into social media. It's like social
Maybe
media
it does.
doesn't,
Maybe it doesn't have to. I
it
mean, it's
doesn't.
so.
It's like social media doesn't even exist because in some ways it feels like this. I mean, it's sort of technically set now, but kind of not, right? Like there's it almost exists in a world without time. It's like
Well,
what Hollywood is now, but it's what Hollywood has always been.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
purposely there's not really that many markers of when it is taking place.
Well, here's the thing, and bear with me on this because
Yeah.
I'm just ridiculing people who talk about movies when they haven't seen them, and I'm doing the same thing now. You know, but I'm not ridiculing the movie. I'm just saying there has to be in the story like this. There has to be an antagonist, right? So like the
Yes.
character that Dennis Quaid plays, right? Right, he's the boss who says
Yeah.
you're fired and all this stuff, and then um, with social media and these girls on TikTok, they are doing it to themselves,
Well, that's what,
right?
but that in a substance, she is her antagonist, right? That's the thing, is these two people, which are ultimately both her, are also each sees themselves as a protagonist and the other one is the antagonist. So she is both her
Interesting.
own protagonist and antagonist.
Okay,
It,
I got to go see this
you know,
movie.
screw it. You know something? I'm watching it again too.
There you go.
Freaking
I'm
talking
gonna
about this so much is
yeah,
making
yeah,
me
yeah.
want to
Because
watch it again.
then we'll talk about it even
Yeah, and
at
we're gonna
more length.
do it
So
again.
I'll tell
Yeah,
you, I'll
yeah.
go see the
Sorry,
substance.
guys.
You go see Megalopolis,
I'm going to because you
which I would
inspired me to do it.
yeah, I would say definitely see it in IMAX. And
Yeah,
the way I'm not telling people how to watch a movie.
yeah,
I'm just saying it's a movie that it pays. It's like Apocalypse Now in that don't fight with it.
yeah.
Just get on the boat
Get on the
and
boat.
and just do it. Just go with the journey.
Okay.
Just see where it goes and how you feel about it. And because it's like a circus. It is very much like a circus. And there's stuff in the movie, and you'll see a lot of the same stuff that I saw. Like, oh, this is. I wonder if he wanted to cast Taylor Swift in this part. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
you definitely get a lot. Oh, I get what Shia LaBeouf is doing here.
yeah,
So some of it is very on the nose about current events and things.
yeah.
And the other thing that just, I guess we're going long because we haven't done one of these in a while.
Yeah. Sorry,
But
guys.
it was also interesting to me how, um, and this is a conversation that I wish I could have had with him because I wish we had more time because we had to shoot stuff for TCM. And at one point he was so sweet because everybody pulls this guy in 20 different directions at one time.
Yeah.
And he had so much stuff he had to accomplish. And at one point he just kind of slapped his hands down and said, "Can't Eddie and I just talk for a while?" So he wished he had the time that we have right now, to go
Yeah.
into all this. But I so wanted to ask him about like what he gained and what he lost in having to wait so long to make the movie,
Yeah.
right? Because it was
Yeah.
something he
Yeah.
had planned in the late 70s, and he carried this idea for decades about a modern day Roman spectacle, like a film
Yeah.
about the Roman Empire that's set in New York. And I just think that's so interesting. Like when he finally came to make the movie, like, wow, there was no social media when he started envisioning the movie, right? So it's a totally different approach to the material. And America was not in the predicament it's in now
Yeah.
back in the 70s. It's always a predicament, but it was a
Yeah.
different predicament, right? And now a lot of the stuff that the film obviously was always about, I guess,
Yeah.
is clearly issues that the country is facing right now, you
Yeah.
know. So the timing of its release is fortuitous, it seems to me, except when the New York Times goes out of its way to write stories about how it's playing to near empty theaters. Like,
Yeah.
why would a major metropolitan newspaper dedicate a story to a movie that's not filling theaters,
Yeah.
other than to say here's a megalomaniac artist out of control. Ha ha ha. Look at, he's failing. That
Yeah.
seemed to be the point of the whole thing. Even though Manohla Dargis's review in the New York Times was pretty much my review.
Yeah.
I mean, she said, this is far from a perfect movie, but nobody's taking these kind of risks today. So why are we, we should be open to that.
Yeah.
More filmmakers should be willing to take these kind of risks, and there you go. That's it. I've said enough now.
Yeah, no, it's funny you said that about, or he talked about, Roman spectacle, because my father, like from the 1970s onward, always said the United States was Rome.
Yeah.
We were just waiting for our fall.
It is. It's the fall of the Roman Empire, and that's, I mean, and we're living through it right now. I mean, that is what's happening.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the movie is very interesting in that respect, and the movie itself is interesting, but the experience of the movie in a social context is very interesting to me because of why people react to it the way they do.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody said, I read one critic who said, if this had been somebody's second film or something, they would have been laughed off the screen. And I don't necessarily believe that at all.
Yeah.
Because if it hadn't been that everybody knew that he sold one of the wineries and it was his 120 million, I don't think, I'm really curious as to why that's part of the story. I mean, it's part of the story for me because it's like, well, there's an artist I can admire because he's not playing with somebody else's money.
Mm-hmm.
He's playing
mm-hmm.
with his own money. Right. Yeah. And I can tell you right now, if you wanted to clear out Hollywood of the dead weight, you'd say, you got to use your own money to make this movie. And nothing would get made. Well, no, actually you'd get the shit you're getting now, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. Which is like, we're going to feed this into a computer algorithm and decide how our money is best spent. And it's going to be making the movie that you already made over and over and over again until nobody shows up. And then they'll go, we don't understand. What did we do wrong? And it's like, don't you get it? That people want to see something fresh and new and different, but anyway.
Wow. Okay.
We went long.
We went long. We were excited because we haven't done this in a while. So this will be playing at some point during Noir City, DC.
Okay.
Just
all right, very good.
So hopefully everyone watching this is having a good time at Noir City, DC. So because it's October, right? God, my brain is fried.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
Well,
lately.
if it goes up on a Thursday, it's either going to go up on my travel day or it'll be. I've already been to Noir City, DC.
One of the two. Yeah.
And I'm back home, and turning right around to go on the TCM cruise. And I wind up today by telling you something that will make you very happy. I learned yesterday that on the TCM cruise they will be airing. They will be showing 2 episodes of Columbo.
Yay!
I am not at liberty to say why they are showing these 2 Columbo episodes, but there will be 2 Columbo episodes on the cruise.
Oh, it's so exciting.
And an episode of the Rockford Files.
Oh, awesome.
Just so you know. It's funny. You have the funny lighting today. I have the lighting that's making it look like I'm missing a tooth over here.
Oh, God, it does. It does make you look like you got a gap.
That's just unfortunate lighting because I guarantee you I own. Where is it? Oh, there.
There you go. See,
there is a tooth in there, but yeah, you have to kind of be careful when you light me, like on TV and stuff. If the light is a certain strong from the side, it looks like the tooth is gone. Hi, Alfred E. Newman here.
Yeah.
Let me worry. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
All right, Anne. It was a pleasure to see you half the time today.
I know. Apologies for my lighting, guys. In case you didn't get I'm shooting this during my day job, so I just kind of
no cats today.
Yeah, so no cats and a brick wall for my background.
Okay, but you look great. The haircut looks great. There you go. 2 thumbs up. Okay. Cool. and then we'll I hopefully there won't be as big a gap. We'll sort that out amongst ourselves, but still a lot of travel for me the next month or so. So,
Yep.
but we'll make sure we do another one.
Okay, sounds good.
And want to thank everybody for watching and everybody for their very kind comments when they meet me at these festivals and reveal how they watch the show and how fond they are of you, Anne.
Oh, that's so good to hear. And yeah, just thank you for everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like, share, please. And yeah, but thanks everybody, and thank you for your patience for the long delays since our last episode.
Yeah,
I
that was a
appreciate
while.
that.
That was a
Yeah.
while. Okay.
Okay.
We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Good night,
Bye.
everybody.